welcome back to another podcast on a bit of a rainy day here on the Gold Coast, but it's kind of relaxing.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's chill.
It's
good.
chill.
It's study weather. You're like, you don't feel bad about not doing anything.
We haven't got a beer in our
Easy
hands.
day.
It's got a bit of tea and a bit of coffee, and it's nice and warm and a bit cozy.
Bit
It's,
of green tea.
It's good. Welcome back to another
Chill.
podcast, guys, and thanks again for your support. We had a really good episode last week with the Aquaflux guys, and that's gone really well. And it's been great to get our first guests on the show, and I think it was received really well. So we'll look to do a lot more of that. And
For sure.
Yeah. For those who aren't following or subscribed on YouTube or Instagram or any of our platforms, please do so. We're trying to grow in the Gold Coast area and become the guys who are cultivating positivity through health, wealth, and wellness. And today's show is going to be focused a lot on the wellness side of things. We did health last week, and today, we think it's really important that in today's ever crazy world that we live in, you've got to take time to look after yourself, both your body and your mind. And Sam, he's quite knowledgeable in this space, so we're going to be asking him a lot of questions and doing a lot of discussion about just generally what wellness is, how you can take care of yourself, and how important it actually is in today's world to do that. So I'd like to just maybe go around the table here first and just define in your words what wellness actually is. I'll start with Sam.
Okay. I think for me, it's about controlling stress, and then that has a lot of factors that we probably don't really consider. And we'll go into that in more detail, but for me, I think it's about the control of stress.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I guess for me, it's about an understanding of who you are and what you want from life. I feel like people need to dive into themselves before they go projecting a lot out into the world.
Yes.
And it's about understanding who you are, where you're going, and a bigger perspective of the reality around you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably what wellness is for me.
That's a good one. I think I'm kind of similar to that. It's when you say the word wellness, and I used to be a very, very arrogant young man back in my high school days and even back at university and everything, where you just have that sort of false sense of confidence that a lot of young males tend to have. And I think wellness is actually getting to that point where you can get past that, look within yourself and go, okay, the things that I was doing maybe wasn't making my mind very happy and comfortable on the inside. And it's about treating your mind as your little tool that you've got that's yours and nobody else's. And if you're constantly trying to go one way and one way and one way and not take care of yourself in the other ways, I think it could be actually very detrimental to your long-term mental health. And so when you look at wellness, I think it's very much what you said. It's taking care of your own mind, and that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And yeah. I think that's my definition of it.
Very, very well put. So essentially, it's mind, body, and soul, and looking after all of those three factors. And I think a lot of people focus on one or two of those, but you really need to have a holistic approach to health and wellness, and it's mind, body, and soul.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, something I was going to say actually after Jason's was mind and body, but yeah, the soul is a good addition to that, because it's about who you are.
And a lot of people kind of think, like religion, and it's like, no, that's not what soul is. Soul is like, you've got a brain that thinks, and it's a tool, and then you've got self, which is like another sense of existence and consciousness. And you're like, well, who's the self? And it's like, well, there's a conversation that happens in your head. So there's a question asked and a question answered. Someone's asking the question and someone's answering the question. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah.
You're looking a little bit confused. Because for some people, it's the first time they ever think about it in this way.
Yeah.
And it's a confusing thing.
It is confusing, yeah.
And there's multiple ways to explain it. And you could just kind of keep going through versions of explanation until it kind of makes sense. The brain is a tool, and it's only ever meant to be used as a tool. And a lot of these like spiritual teachers will refer to it as the ego. The brain thinker is the ego. And somewhere along the sort of development stage, it became controlling, and it wanted more purpose and existence in itself. So it fights for relevance. So your ego is constantly fighting for relevance against your spirit. Does that make sense?
That
or
makes,
is it
yeah,
still
that makes a
kinda-
lot more sense. It's sort of like the brain's mutated away from pure survival instinct and being that tool
Yeah,
to so much more than that.
yeah,
And it's overshadowing, the other side of who you are as a person.
Yeah. So it's
It's
like
like-
your mind is
Yeah.
more on the surface, but your spirit is deeper.
Yeah.
It has a deeper meaning and purpose to
It's-
where your path is leading, or what you want in that moment of time.
yeah. And there's you could talk for thousands of years about the philosophy of spirit and the potential interconnectiveness of spirit, and that kind of feeds into family and community and growing yourself to then tend to your own garden and improve your community is all driven by your spirit.
And how old were you when you sort of came to that realization?
It was a book I read that a mate recommended to me probably after uni. I would have been mid 20s. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And the book was The Power of Now.
I've seen that one around.
It was pretty successful in
It's
its
got a blue
time.
cover?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to have to go back and read it again because it's the sort of book you should read once a year, I think. And it was a heavy book. Like, you would read a paragraph and for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you're reflecting on it. It was a pretty deep read. Yeah, I'd have to go back and read that again.
Yeah. Because it's interesting. Like, I'm only 25, so for me it's taken sort of up until being 25 to go through and live life, do lots of different things, travel a bit, meet different people, get involved in business, and suss out what the world is really about.
Yeah.
Because when you're a young man, you do, like I said before, you have that sort of, I'm
It's-
going to call it uneducated arrogance.
It's science. Your brain's not,
Like,
your cerebral cortex isn't fully developed.
Exactly.
You're that risk taker for a reason.
Yeah.
And you've got that confidence
Yeah.
for a reason.
Yeah,
But
it's like you're
at
genetically
risk.
coded to be that way.
Yeah.
But you get to a point, and I think it's like, for me especially, it's happened very rapidly, very quickly, in the
Yeah.
last sort of 6 months, 12 months, where you start to stop and you go, oh, okay, well, there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
And there's more to think about, and there's more to consider.
Yeah.
And
There's more than just me.
yeah, there's more than just me, basically.
Yeah.
Because that comes to an end point, and you go, right, well, you start considering other people, your friends, your family, girlfriends, fiancés, wives, etc., etc. And I know I'm preaching this to people who already know this, who
Not everyone does though. Like,
Yeah.
there's people that are pre your realization.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Like, wellness comes down to a conscious understanding of the reality in the world around you and where you are in that.
That's an important factor.
It's
'Cause
a very important
A lot of
factor.
people on the subconscious level struggle with that point of, where do I fit in this?
Who am I?
Mm.
What am I?
What's the
Mm.
purpose?
What
What's
is
the
this?
meaning of
You know
life?
what?
But even asking those questions is a fundamental start
Yep.
to getting into the wellness
Asking them
space.
to your consciousness, because
Yeah.
they're already getting asked in your subconsciousness,
right.
and it's triggering anxiety without you realizing it. And you've kind of got to, like, a lot of the meditation practices and even like things like exercise, things we'll talk about later, but essentially it's connecting your consciousness with your subconsciousness. There's like think of it as like a wall between the two, and they don't really directly communicate with each other, and then when you sleep they kind of do. You want to try and get to that state of consciousness when you're awake, and you can use like deep meditation to do it, and you kind of connect your subconsciousness or your high consciousness with your consciousness, and it's essentially your spirit and mind being more in tune and connected. And then the more you can synchronize those two, the less anxiety you'll have when they're kind of in different directions.
Yeah.
There's anxiety, and then when you can synchronize the two, it's completeness of self, and you're not asking all these like anxious questions of, hang on, who am I? What is the purpose of this? What am I doing
100%,
here?
yeah.
I think a lot of that comes down to getting out and trying a heap of different experiences in life, and travel. Travel
was
for
opens
me.
up.
Yeah,
It's definitely what it was for me.
Broadening your consciousness and a deeper understanding of the world, and everything about it. And when you travel, you really dive into who you are a lot more as well.
And
especially when you travel by yourself.
You find out Disneyland's not real. That's such an important factor.
Yeah.
You got to get out there, and
Yeah.
if you're thinking about Disneyland, you got to go and find out it's not
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
And go back to simplifying things and enjoying the simple things in life. And that's a journey, and it's trial and error.
Yeah.
And some people never complete it.
Well, no. I mean, I think one of the huge things too is the grass is not always greener on the other side. Like we always think it is.
That's kind of what I mean by Disneyland's not real.
Yeah,
You set this fantasy in your head
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, if I go do this and I go do that, then I'll be happy.
Yeah.
And you're focusing on the end state.
Yeah.
It really is back to the basics of focus on the journey, enjoy the now, be present.
Yeah.
Be present. Don't
That's
worry about the
a huge
future.
one, man. Being present is huge.
All of the like spiritual teachings and things like that, they all have that fundamental overlapping theme of being present. And that's where a lot of these things will talk about. That's what it's doing. It's making you present.
Yeah, for sure. And I think another thing you brought up too about, people sort of have an end in mind. There really isn't an end.
Yep.
There isn't an
the
end.
end could be tomorrow, but
The end.
the end could be tomorrow. You just don't know.
The end of your.
It's out of your control.
It is out of your control.
The end of your life as such. Yeah.
That's what I meant by
terms
that.
of-
And maybe that's where a lot of it falls back on, is our fear. Our biggest fear in life is the fear of death. This is a theory. Our biggest fear in life is the fear of death. And then the fear of the death of our parents is the closest thing to our own death, the death of our parents, going through that experience. And
I would say I'm more scared for the day my parents die than me dying.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Because I'd have to be here to go through that pain.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
if
So
I'm dead,
it's
I'm not.
Yeah, it's the closest thing you'll get to experiencing your own death.
Yeah.
And that has a lot of other behavioral issues that, psychiatrists would love to talk about. Like you could talk for centuries about the behavioral results of people's fear of their parents' death.
Yeah.
What were we talking about before this?
I think we should bring it back to, you said at the start when you were talking, your definition of the wellness was the stress side of things.
Yeah.
So maybe we should talk about how to overcome that and what you can do.
I think that's a good point. It's one of the more basic factors of explaining it. So there's a thing, HRV, the heart rate variability, and essentially that measures how much stress you're under. And it's a scientific measurement, but the factors that lead to it are mind, body, and soul, is what I believe.
So it's like it's physical and mental
So
stress that it can sort of monitor.
So if you think of like mental stress as having, like, what is mental stress? It's almost like you're living a simulator. Like you've created this thing in your brain that's not now, it's not present, it's not physically around you, but it's having a physical response to your body. Your heart rate's increased, you're
your
sweating.
blood pressure's increasing.
Like the extreme examples of it are things like PTSD or known mental health issues where physically there's nothing happening right now, but in your brain you're about to die.
Yeah.
I lean towards thinking of it as like people. Why are people stressed? Everyone puts extremely bodacious goals and visions on them.
Yeah.
Either that society has put on them or put into their mind, or their parents have put into their mind. So they're really worried about the future.
Yeah.
So they're like, all right, what do I need to do this? I need to get there. I need to. Why do you want that? But yeah, we can dive into
because a
whys
lot of
later.
it comes back to the fear of death. That's why we're talking about it. A lot of root cause of stress is, and we don't realize it, but it's our subconscious fear of death because of our ego's sort of wanting to be relevant. And the more you can just sort of turn that down, the easier it is to tap into being present and being relaxed. So it's almost like accepting death and being okay with
That's
with
interesting.
not being significant.
Yeah, because like a lot of people, oh, I want to be here by the time I'm 30 or 35 and stuff.
Yeah.
But then you're like, well, why put a number on it? Then you realize, oh, it's because I'm going to die at 100.
It's the human experience.
Yeah.
And you don't even realize that. Oh, why 35? Okay, well then because I'm a third of the way through my life. You just have that assumption in your head. You're going to live. I'm just saying 100. I know it's less than that.
Yeah.
But like,
It'll probably be 100 for us.
for us, it's probably going to be 100.
Yeah.
But you're like, oh, 35, 40. 50. You think about it. It's all so irrelevant.
Mm.
It's so irrelevant because then what? You get to that point and then what?
I
You're still
love-
going to be here for another 70 odd years. Then what?
That's why I got into space. I think it
Yeah.
really, it really drills down on how irrelevant our consciousness and ego is.
Yeah.
Because you just zoom out,
Scale.
you see how small the planet is, and then you see the sun, and you're like, well, the sun's going to blow up one day, and everything we know in our
Yeah.
sense of existence
Yeah.
is gone.
Yeah.
And then you sort of become a little bit spiritual from that. You're like, well, is there still something after that? I guess so. We don't know. But let's say there is. I'd prefer it to think that there is. And that kind of opened my mind to the concepts that then go into the...
Yeah. Well, what you're
spiritual
explaining to me
discussions, but-
is perspective, which is what I'm a huge advocate for.
Yeah.
You got to have an extremely deep understanding of perspective, who you are, where you are. Like we are just small beings on a rock spinning around the sun,
Mm.
365 days a year, one rev. Like,
And this,
You know-
this time and space, like this
Yeah.
time and space right now, we're a grain of sand on the planet, like with the amount of people that are around and everything. But then think of history and future and put that into even more
Yeah.
Biggest
expansion. It's
perspectives.
like
Absolutely
we're so
nothing.
insignificant.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing.
yeah.
Why stress about silly things when it's insignificant?
yeah.
Yeah.
Relax and enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
Well, that's right. It's like understanding, like, oh, I get my meal at a restaurant and I'm real angry that they've undercooked my steak and that's going to ruin my night. Well, really? Is that
Dude.
gonna
Yeah.
is
That's
that
a
gonna ruin your
big
night?
thing.
Like,
So I think we can
What-
dive into that.
there's more to life. Like I always look at things more in a macro perspective in that dimensional space
Yeah.
where I rationalize life by, we're on a rock spinning around the sun, blah blah blah,
Yeah.
all that sort of stuff. And when I hear people or even thoughts come into my brain about complaining, for example, which I wouldn't do about like a steak undercooked or something like that, I just can't rationalize that thought.
That's the ego taking over and saying, "How dare they?
Yeah.
My time is precious. I'm important. I'm relevant, and this is unacceptable."
Yeah.
That's why I love comedy. It really something I've had ever since I was a little kid is just the ability to make things funny, either funny for me or funny for the people around me, and I really get enjoyment out of making people laugh. But essentially, it's a great defense mechanism. You can turn any situation into something positive, and that's a very powerful aspect of being able to control your own wellness. And we'll just dive into that. We talked about before the podcast how, thinking like an engineer, there's an input, a process, and an output. The output is essentially how much stress or your emotional response, what your body is doing, its heart rate, its release of different things throughout the body. The process is what your brain's doing to comprehend your environment, to then come up with the output.
Yeah.
And then the input is your environment. It's the whatever it might be, like your mind's thoughts of things or your physical surroundings of weather, people, politics.
Who you associate
physical-
yourself with is a really big one to your wellness.
It's massive. So it's like
Show me your friends, I'll show you your future.
You can spend a lot of effort trying to control your inputs to then have a good output. It's a lot more efficient and easier to control your processing. So control yourself. How do you process things? So we could be sitting in the same room at the same temperature with the same TV program or reading the same book or whatever and have two completely different outputs
100%.
based on how we process the inputs. And it's so simple, but it's so powerful. And that's where meditation comes into play. Like when you meditate, this is what you're training to do. You're essentially training to put a positive reaction to everything. So your immediate response, before you've given it any conscious thought, is positive. The way the brain works is repetition. You've got to train that.
Yeah.
And that's what meditation can do. You'll literally reprogram how your brain works because you've spent, all your life programming your brain, the grey matter highways. People describe it as like skiing down a mountain is a good way to describe it. The more you ski down a path, the easier it is. The brain's lazy. It's efficient in that way. It'll use like a quick, we'll go to this memory or we'll go to this mindset because it
makes me feel good.
It's got to be,
Zip.
Yep, we've used that the last 10 times. We won't even ask the brain. We'll just go there and grab it.
Yeah.
Like that's how it kind of works. So the more you teach it to go to the positives, the more you're controlling that processing because there's only so much your consciousness can control. A lot of it is outside of your consciousness. And people say we use 3 or 4% of our brain. It's all of our brain, but we're only really...
This is huge, and like what you've just said. Like I went through something. It's the last week or the week before. I can't remember. But I was having a bad day. Right. It got to the end of the day. It was things are going on in the world. There's been coronavirus, the Black Lives Matter movement. All this stuff. Just so much controversy in the world right now.
Such divisive.
And
topics.
I never usually let it all get to me. What I normally try and do is focus on my little environment that I'm living. I still like to know what's going on in the world, like everybody, but for whatever reason, man, that day, the weight of the world and everything going on in it just landed on me. And again, when I was younger, I would not have let that happen. I would have just blocked it out because that's not my problem.
Yeah.
Now,
someone else will solve that.
Yeah, I was just like, but now, like, you start taking it on a little bit, and I just sat there, man, and I was feeling so down. And I got my sketch pad out and I drew a prism, right? And I drew a person trapped in that prism. And on each line of that prism, I wrote things that I was feeling, and just things that like weren't sitting right with me about the world in general, and the prism that we're trapped in by living on Earth. And it was like sex, drugs, alcohol, racism, capitalism, the meat industry, all these things that were not sitting right with me at that point in time. And I drew myself in this prism and I felt just that's what I'm trapped here on Earth. That's how I feel right now.
Yeah.
And
the prism.
The prison was the prison that you're living on Earth, yeah. And you know what happened? I showed Shantina, my fiance, and she grabbed it. She got a pencil out. She put a cross through sex. She put make love. She put a cross through capitalism. And she put, the ability for freedom. Opportunity.
Yeah.
She crossed out all these things and she wrote something positive about every single one of them on the prism. She handed it back to me.
Yeah. That's
Your
powerful.
perspective.
And I just went, holy. It's exactly what you're just talking about. The inputs of the world, the way I was perceiving it and processing it was resulting in me feeling that output.
Yeah.
All it took was for somebody else to see that and go, oh, well, think about it this way instead.
That's right.
Change your process.
Change your mindset.
Change your mindset. And I suddenly just went,
Wow.
what the hell?
Have a positive outlook.
Yeah. And, I think that in itself, the fact that I had someone there to do that for me was a big deal because I was feeling really bad that night.
Yeah.
And I think if you can just realize that you can change that process in your head, you can change it. People change. So many people say, oh, he doesn't change. No one changes. Yeah. Rubbish. I think anybody who has the mental capacity to look within themselves and go, I want to change things about myself, or there's things I don't like about myself. Yeah, you can change it. And you can change as a person.
That's the key, is wanting to change.
You have to want to change.
Wanting to change. Like, I've got friends in the industry that use things like hypnotherapy and different treatments, and they're like, whatever it is, they've got to want it. If it's some guy that wants, his wife brought him in and said he needs to quit smoking, and he's like, look, I actually love smoking, but see what you can do, doc. It's like, no, this isn't going to work.
It's not going to work.
You got to want to change.
Yeah.
But 100%, anyone can change.
Yeah.
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 Anything in life, if you want it, you can get it, but you have to change your current state and what you're doing. Because obviously what you're doing right now won't get you to where you want to be unless you change certain aspects to align you as a person with your vision and your goals.
I think of it that way too.
You can't keep doing the same thing and expect a different result.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
It's the definition of insanity.
You got to set that long-term goal and reverse engineer it back to where you are now.
Yeah, goal setting is
It's huge.
so important.
It's everything. It's manifesting where you want to be.
I learned that with yoga. Because
Yeah?
like I'll do these yoga YouTube clips and they're always banging on about set your intention. Set your intention. And that's setting your goals. What's your intention here? And yoga
As
is
in
just
set that intention for how you want to feel after the session. Is that
well,
what you mean?
they don't go into too much specifics. You kind of
Okay,
work
so
out
they
yourself.
leave it
as you
It's
go.
open-ended for you to
Yeah.
okay.
form
But
your
what
own
it does
perspective.
is, when you're doing yoga and doing it properly, you go to these parts of your brain where you're in so much pain and there's a button you can press to stop that pain. And it's a safe pain. It's not damaging, but it's pain. And you go to press the button and then you go back to your intention and you're like, oh, I'm gonna use that intention to motivate me to drive harder than I've ever driven before. It's setting goals, setting intentions is a powerful motivator, and you want to be damn well careful of what goals and intention you set. And if you're not setting intentions and goals, something else is.
That's true.
That's a very, very important
What is it
point
in
to
you
raise.
that's setting those goals
Your
without you
ego.
even realizing?
And that's
Your
where you
ego.
start smoking, you start drinking coffees, you start these addictions, because then your ego's in control, not your spirit.
You don't have a vision, a goal, a destination, essentially. You don't... Yeah.
Do you think...
It's crazy.
I'm going to bring us back more on topic about, what we can do to aid this wellness thing physically and mentally. But one more question before we go there. It's what you just mentioned. The coffee, the cigarettes, the alcohol, the drugs, everything else. We were all just talking about this before the show, how, we've been through COVID, we haven't been drinking that much and et cetera, et cetera. We all went out.
Some people have.
Yeah. We all went out on Friday night, though. I went out for dinner.
Yeah.
I think you guys went out for a night out somewhere in Brisbane.
Yeah.
I had probably 3 drinks. But, I still drove home. I had 3 drinks in about 3 hours, so it was fine. And even the next morning, I woke up and I'm like, oh, geez, I feel cloudy. I don't feel straight in my head like I had for the last months because I haven't been drinking that much. Do you think the vices that we have, the smoking, the drinking, the drugs, everything else, not us personally, but as a society, they're actually suppressing that inner self from coming out?
100%.
Yeah.
That's why they're there.
Yeah. Even things like TV programs and junk.
Yeah.
Just junk.
Yeah.
Whether it's
Entertainment
physical
for the
junk
people.
or entertainment junk, distractions.
Yeah.
It's all massively limiting your potential. And potential is such a word that it really evokes an emotion in me. I don't even know what that emotion is, but it's kind of like potential. So many people have potential and they're not fulfilling it. And like we talk about David Goggins and how inspirational he is, and he gets quite angry about what people leave on the table. And he's like a 11 out of 10 example of what can happen when you tap into your potential.
He pushes body and mind to the next
but
level.
there's something to it. Like in everyone, there's more potential. We're leaving a lot on the table, and a lot of it is you get into that mindset of junk.
Yeah, comes down to us wanting to live that life of the path of least resistance, and it's like your comfort zone.
That's true.
You do find yourself. I find myself especially. You push yourself. You get to this next level of your own mind and goals.
Yeah,
and then you're there, and then it becomes your new comfort zone, and then you're relaxed. And you're like, oh yeah, I could just. And then some days I wake up and I'm like, why am I still just doing this?
Yeah.
What else? Where am I going next? What's next? Why aren't I working towards that right now? What do I need to do to get myself in a headspace
good at
to do
setting long-term goals the last few years. When I was like 18, I had the 3-year, 5-year, 10-year, and it worked. Like you set 5-year goals, you knock them over in 3, and you're like, that was easy. I could double down on that. What's next?
Have you heard of that Jim Carrey story where he put that check in his wallet?
Yeah.
I haven't. Tell me.
Yeah, so like he was trying to make it big time in the film industry, and he wrote himself a check for, was it 10 million?
I think it was $1 million, but it might have been 10 million.
Yeah, it was something in the millions years beforehand, and carried it in his wallet every day, and drove around through Hollywood to all the lush houses and everything. And then a couple of years later, I think he did The Mask, the movie The Mask, and then he ended up
He got the payday.
getting the payday for the check that was in his wallet.
He's a great example of pulling back the curtain.
He
You know,
is on another level when it comes to just realizing. Look, there's two ways to see Jim Carrey. Some people love him, some people hate him. And I'm not talking about the actor Jim Carrey. I'm talking about
the real Jim
the
Carrey.
real Jim Carrey. He is
Yeah.
very controversial at the moment.
Very.
He you know, I've seen clips of him, you know, he's getting interviewed on a red carpet and he just doesn't care. He's like, none of this matters.
Yeah.
Like, none of this is even real. This is all just fabricated as our society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because he genuinely thinks that he might be educating people, but is it being done in a positive way?
I think
I don't know.
I think it's like is Nicolas Cage an artist or a maniac? It's kind of like you need to be that extreme to kind of steer this juggernaut back on course.
Yeah.
Because you look at Hollywood and where it was heading and the red carpets and all the fakeness of it
Yeah.
all. Like, I don't know if you've ever kind of been a little bit behind the scenes of any of that sort of stuff. Everything's staged. Reality TV. It's all
it's all staged. Yeah.
So he's just like, I'm not playing this game anymore. I don't care about the money. You can't persuade me with money, and you don't have any other mechanism to bully me into being in this system. And I'm just going to be my own free spirit.
Yeah.
And he's like the epi.
Yeah, he's like right. Him and Russell Brand. Russell Brand's kind of similar.
Yeah.
They're very much on the same wavelength when it comes to, you know, the
Yeah,
whole fakeness about everything.
I'd love to see those two in a room. For
Oh,
an
could you
hour.
imagine them on a podcast talking together?
Two funny people.
It would be. I reckon it'd be fiery. I reckon it'd be quite good.
A
Yeah.
clash of
interesting.
personality.
Yeah, because they're two, like as we just said, they're two people who they've
Yeah.
made it to the top of their game. They don't care. It's not about this. It's not about this.
But I reckon
Challenge
that
my
they'd-
way of thinking.
Yeah,
They'd compliment.
yeah.
They'd compliment
Challenge
each
me.
other a lot. Like
Yeah.
I like seeing like Russell Brand and Ricky Gervais
Yeah,
sort of go at it because they've got very differing
yeah.
beliefs,
Yeah,
but they still have a really great way to discuss it. Like
Yeah.
they're a great example of, okay, you two people disagree.
yeah,
Discuss what you disagree and,
Yep.
and see if you can persuade each other.
yeah. Okay, I want to come back to, you know, I don't want to say curing wellness because it's not. You know, wellness, as we just said before, it's like it's a different thing to everybody, but I think we can all agree that
Those things we can do to aid.
yes,
The toolkit.
wellness.
The
it's all
to-
about your mind,
Yeah.
your body,
Yeah.
and what you feed your mind and your body.
Yeah.
So if we can talk about, let's split it into two. Let's talk about your mind.
Yeah.
Okay. And that comes down to the whole perceiving of information thing, but it
Yep.
also comes down to what you can do, meditation, you know, things to train your
Yeah,
mind. to
these
think a
words
certain
that
way.
people use.
Mm.
How do you
Yeah.
put it into practice?
Yeah,
The
yeah,
practical
Yeah.
implementation
Yeah.
of words.
So what can you do then?
Yep.
Let's talk about mind.
Yep.
Okay.
One thing for me with mind, so a real common one, social media, right? Everyone now is consuming a lot of content on social media.
Yeah.
It's got a bad rap, which there is a lot of terrible information and
Yeah.
you know, misleading information on social media. But it's how you go about that and what information you choose to consume. So you could sit down for 4 hours of a day and consume negative information, or if you've set some goals in your life through forms of wellness, let's say you want to have some investment properties, or you want to start a business. Okay, well, in the 4 hours of tech consumption, are you watching inspirational people and videos of people that have been in these areas and done that, and you're learning, or are you just watching videos of people on TikTok twerking on cars?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for me, in that mindset realm with social media, it's about what you consume.
Control your inputs.
And you control your inputs. So it's like, okay, I'm slightly addicted to social media, but what am I consuming on this? And how can
recognize your addictions.
recognize your addiction, change your
capitalize on it.
capitalize on it, change your perspective with it, and go, okay, I do check my phone a lot, but now that I know that I check my phone a lot, I'm going to follow some business pages and have some inspirational quote pages or something, just to spark that bit of
Yeah.
positivity in my mind every day.
For sure.
Mm.
That's great. That's a good way to do it. It's kind of like controlling your inputs.
Control your inputs.
And you don't have to change it drastically. It's like, well, I know I spend
Yep.
time doing this. I'll just make that junk better.
Yeah.
It's like instead of grabbing the Mars bar, I'll grab the apple. They're
Yeah.
both tasty sources of sugar.
I'm still
marketing
eating.
just
Yeah.
told me to eat the Mars bar.
Yeah.
I actually
Yeah.
enjoy the apple better.
I'm still
Yeah.
eating.
I'm still eating.
I'm still
getting my
Still
nutrients.
quenching my hunger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
But I'm just doing something a bit healthier.
Yeah, for
I,
sure.
I think from a broad perspective, people want a shortcut in life. Everyone kind of wants
That's
a
so
shortcut
true,
in life.
man.
And
Everybody
the,
wants a damn
The
shortcut.
reality is, it's not hard work, but it's hard work. It's consistency. It's setting a routine and sticking to it and having discipline, having self-accountability. It really helps when you have people that are influencing it all positively. That helps massively. Like what you said. What was it? Show me
Show me your friends, I'll
Friends
show
or
you your
shit.
future.
It's very true. Surround yourself with people that are like-minded and are having a positive impact on your capability. It's not 100% necessary, but it makes it easier.
Mm.
Discipline, accountability, routine. So think what works for you. Like I'll talk really quickly about different things that can help with stress. Find the things that work for you. You don't have to do everything, and don't jump straight into it. Don't try and run a marathon tomorrow. Like it might not be 3 hours a day applied to this, that, and the other.
Don't try to be David Goggins.
Don't do the 160
Be you.
miles, 160 kilometers in a day. Yeah, like have your goal and work towards it in a way that you're achieving things, you're motivating, you're building momentum to get to your goal. You're not trying to set realistic goals, essentially. So some things, I talked about stress and controlling stress. Stress is measurable in your heart rate variability. You can get monitoring devices that measure HRV. HRV is one of the most underrated measurements of health and wellness. Like it's a scientific response. Your body has two main functions: the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system essentially sends power and energy to your muscles. It's the fight, flight, or freeze response that linking back to our DNA, 200,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, we're hunter and gatherers in the forest. We needed a fear response for our survivability. There was times where we needed to be physically optimal to fight or run away from a bear. Then there's the parasympathetic nervous system. That does everything else. That's your regenerative functions, your brain building, your immunity system, all the long-term health benefits, all of the anti-aging longevity stuff, fighting diseases. Like, don't underestimate what a strong immunity system does. That fights off cancer. Like, looking after that, keeping your body in a state where it's in that parasympathetic nervous system is the ultimate kind of health and wellness outcome. So you get a device to measure your HRV and you can find out what works for you, but science has done the studies and research, and a lot of the things are sleep is so damn important for HRV. Getting a good night's sleep, getting plenty of REM sleep is the number one thing.
REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. That's
Yeah.
the sleep that we dream mostly in. Yep.
Yep. So sleep is massive. And then when you're awake, what can you do? Saunas are huge. So you have saunas 30 to 40 minutes.
So this is moving into like sort of the physical as well of what you can do.
Well, yeah, it's kind of hard to split
Physical
the two.
aids the mental, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
really
it
does.
actually does. It's
Yeah,
actually
it's
not.
all
It's
a link.
pointless splitting them into two. About what
It really does.
all sort of
And they're all
intertwined.
they're all having
Yeah.
the same impact. It's kind of like lowering your stress, reducing your heart rate, or high intensity heart rate. Two completely different ends of the spectrum, but have the same outcome on your HRV. So things like saunas, meditation. What's meditation? Well, it's turning off your brain. What's your brain doing? It's creating this simulation of fear. It's worrying about the future, reflecting negatively on the past, stressing about things that you don't need to be stressing about right now. You got to worry about paying a bill, worry about it for 2 minutes, come up with a plan, and then put it aside. It's that thing of, what are you worrying about? This. Can you fix it? Yeah, I can fix it. Well, then don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Can you fix it? No, I can't fix it. Well, then why worry about it?
Don't worry
Yeah,
about it.
yeah.
That's so true.
So just give it as much thought as you need to. Don't have that
Mm.
repetitive loop for 2 hours of the same.
And then dive deeper.
thought, and then dive
deeper.
deeper.
And deeper.
Because that's
Yeah.
what will
And then
happen.
you're just like, what's life?
You'll go down a rabbit hole of negative thoughts. Like
Yeah.
if
It's
you're
not worth it.
feeling crap, your memory recall goes to those emotions that are associated with that feeling, and
Mm.
it's just compounded. That's where you kind of need a
Yeah.
person to just shake you out of it and go, hey, let's put a positive spin on it.
Yeah,
And
well,
then-
it's exactly what I went through the other night. Same thing.
Yep.
Yeah. So meditation, I don't do it enough, but when I do it, it's the breathing, connecting with your breath. It's really just turning off the brain and connecting with your body, and then listening to your body. What's sore? What's not? Well, you know, just go through, feel your feet, your legs. They kind of go a bit numb, then your arms, and then your body. There's good apps that you can do to talk you through it. I'd recommend doing that if you've never
Mm.
really done it before. But what I
Mm.
kind of do is just breathe, box breathing, you know, breathe in, hold for 5, breathe out, hold for 5. But a lot of it I do with yoga. That's when I meditate. Because they kind of force you to.
It's
force you to do that.
amazing. It's
Yeah.
amazing what even just 3 deep breaths, when you're feeling
Yeah.
tight and stressed,
It
can
resets
do.
your brain.
Reset. Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Is it 6 deep breaths? I think it is. You breathe in for 6 and then out for 6 and repeat that 6 times. And I think that can reset
I'm sure.
a
Dude,
lot of your anxious
all it takes me is 3
Yeah,
deep breaths.
state. and
Breathe
stress.
in for 5 seconds, 6 seconds,
Mm.
hold for 5 or 6 seconds,
Yeah,
breathe
breathe
out,
out.
hold.
Yeah.
The other thing is cold shock therapy. So if you don't have a pool or anything that you can jump in during winter, shower. Just run the cold water for 20 or 30 seconds. And I love doing that because your body goes into that shock and your breathing's like
Yeah.
Mm.
and you've got to hack into it and sort of overcome it and relax your breathing and just tell yourself it's fine, don't worry, it's fine.
It's a fear response.
And then you just kind of go into this relaxed state of mind in this really cold. There's science where it releases cold shock proteins and I think all of these things have scientific measurable outcomes that increase longevity. They make your body produce NMN and different aspects. But I think they also train your brain to be more resilient. And I think that's something that's pretty understated in life, especially in today's society when we're raising a generation of softies.
Well, 100%. It's like you're putting yourself in these situations where you don't want to be in. I'm sure you don't, when you go to do a cold bath, you're not thinking, oh, yeah, man, this is going to be so good. I'm just going to sit in this cold bath and chill. Or I could just stay in my bed, flick on some Netflix, chill out.
Yeah, and where's
know,
the
it's like-
reward?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
where's
think
the
it
reward?
comes down to the want.
You're not
Wanting
rewarding.
to
You're
do
not
it.
rewarding your spirit
Yeah,
when
yeah,
you're
that's
doing
right.
those things.
Yeah.
You're getting a junk response, like when you eat sugar, when you watch
Yeah.
crappy programs. You just get this short-term, like false dopamine response of happiness, and there's no spiritual happiness. There's no meaning to it.
Mm.
You kind of just distracting yourself through the day, and
Yeah.
I think that HRV band you were talking about that monitors all that, that's actually a great thing too, because, you know, our minds are very powerful, but they're also very stupid. Okay, I can wake up in the space of 3 months. It could happen to me 10 times where I haven't got enough sleep and I'm grumpy. But I wake up grumpy and I go through my day and I'm thinking it's this and, oh, the world hates me and it's all this. And it's just, dude, you just didn't get enough sleep.
Yeah.
I know that deep down.
Yeah.
But like,
to have it at the forefront.
my
of your
mind is telling me that it's all these other things and
Yeah.
I suck and like I'm the worst and like,
Yeah.
you know,
And it's how you talk to
It's-
yourself too.
it stops
Exactly.
the
Like you were
negative
saying right
spiral.
now.
yeah.
You're like, oh, I didn't get enough sleep.
Yeah, but if
Okay.
yeah, like I said, if I've got
You
an app
accept
on my
that.
phone and I've got this thing, it's like, oh, I'm feeling this way because of this.
Yeah.
It's not because I suck. It's because, dude, you just didn't get enough sleep last night, or
Yeah.
you haven't exercised enough, or this, and this. Even just having that information to look at and tell yourself, okay, I'm not the problem.
Yeah.
You know, it's just these things that are happening
And
that I'm not getting enough of.
there's a good point in there where whenever you're in adversary, it's important to be able to remind yourself it's not forever, because we tend to get stuck into that, oh no, this is forever now.
That's true.
And you're like, no, you'll get a good night's sleep tonight and tomorrow everything's going to be okay.
Yep.
But there's a lot of factors. When you're exercising and there's pain, just remind yourself this isn't forever. You got another 3 minutes of it.
That was hard to do this
Yeah.
week after last week's workout. I was in pain for a week. I'm still in pain.
Yeah.
Well, pain is temporary, suffering is optional.
Yep.
Yeah,
Choose
it is.
choose your suffering, I think. Like, you've got to go through that yin and yang balance of, and that's the human experience of suffering and then pleasure.
Mm.
And it's like you can choose your suffering by exercising, by sitting in a cold shower, acupuncture, all these different things.
Mm.
Or suffering will come and choose you. You'll be sitting there and you just be worried, and you're like, you've had 2 coffees and you're stressed, and you're like, why am I so anxious right now? I'm so stressed. I don't even know what I'm stressed about.
Mm.
And you have these moments.
One thing that hit me too was in that Joe Rogan, Kevin Hart podcast, where Kevin Hart was sort of saying, you don't know what's going to happen to you in your life. And all these things like jumping in these cold baths, exercising. Well, what's it all for, you know? And
I
and
remember this part.
yeah, and it
Yeah.
is just it's for you and your life, and doing these things, you never know when you'll tap into them and when you're going to need them. Like
Yep.
when he had his accident, pretty sure when his spine broke, it was
He was
like,
fit enough to.
He was fit enough
he
to
was
take it.
he was fit enough
Yeah.
to take the hit, and that's why he didn't break his spine.
Yep.
So if he didn't do all like exercise throughout his life to in that moment of time be in that physical condition to be able to handle that impact, he probably wouldn't be using his legs right now.
I think that's a good. It's always good to have a physical example that you can say that makes sense, and that's where training kids on sport is so damn good, because it teaches you if you work hard, you'll get a positive result. It's so measurable in that factor. Why do fill in the blank? Similar to that example, that's a physical body response that saved his life. You can have the exact same thing with your mind. It's like you've trained your mind to be resilient. You've trained the ability to turn a situation that's so damn negative and to be able to laugh it off, essentially, and put a positive spin on it and be like, everything's okay. That can save your life as well. People get in like a cushioned upbringing, and then something tragic happens to them, and then they can't handle it.
Mm.
And then they'll
Yeah.
tap out.
Do you think national service should still be a thing?
Like a mandatory thing.
Mandatory. Because it takes...
Strips back everyone's
I don't think
self-perceptions.
I don't think mental health and wellness is advocated enough for, or at least up until this point anyway. I think it's becoming way more of a thing these days, which is great. You know, I don't think it was enough, you know, in the recent past. Because what did you just say before? We're raising a bunch of softies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%
And
believe.
I think if you take somebody who's just finished high school, and this can be for both male and females, you take them and you make them do a mandatory 1 year of national service in the army. It takes everybody out of their comfort zones of what they've known up until 18, 19, or whatever age you are when you finish high school.
Yeah.
And it puts you into an environment where something you're not used to, out of your comfort zone, whether it's mentally, physically, whatever it is, and teaches you those skills to take forward into your life, knowing that, hey, yeah, I went through a year of that. I can handle 6 months of, you know, my business not doing so well, or me hating my boss at work or something. You know, I've trained for that.
Yeah.
A lot. What's happening now is people are going from high school to university. The transition is so easy.
Yeah.
It's so easy. And then the transition from university to work is much harder for a lot of people. But then they get to the work and they're like, oh, is this it?
So
And then mentally, they've never had to face. And I'm not saying this for everybody, because I know that, you know, as you grow up, you know, people lose parents, they lose family. Like, you know, people have been through some serious hell and back.
Yeah, we're talking average.
We're just talking
Your
average
stock
here.
standard.
Yeah. You know, they've not really faced, and again, I'm talking Australia too.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the rest of the world, because obviously a whole different kettle of fish wherever you're living. Here, it's quite an easy ride to get to that point.
Yeah.
Mentally.
Yeah.
And, you know, something's happened in the world where, like, coronavirus, you know, it's affected the entire world and everything like that.
Yeah.
And
people break down.
I think for the first time, people our
Challenged.
age have been really challenged.
Yeah.
And some people who I know are not dealing with it very well, and some are. And it's actually really interesting to see a cross-section of people our age and how they're dealing with it.
Some people are drinking every day, eating crappy foods.
Man, doing drugs, all sorts of
putting
things.
on weight.
And like just mentally breaking down and not having a good time. Like it's really interesting to see this.
A word that really comes to mind is appreciation. You know, when you don't have to work for something, you don't appreciate it. It's the story of Buddha, you know, the son of a king that was miserable, had absolutely everything, everyone pandering to every need, and he was miserable. And then he just walked out into the street and became homeless for 10 years or whatever it was. And that's when he found true enlightenment and happiness, because he had appreciation. And as a society, on general, our level of appreciation is far, far disproportionate to what it was back when life was a bit harder.
Yep.
So I think a national mandatory service for a year, it's a good idea.
Whether it's a military service or whether it's
that's
an
what I was
independent
like volunteer.
service.
That's exactly what I was about to say. It
Volun-
doesn't have to be military.
Volunteer at some kind of service.
Yeah.
Because I think if it had to be military, my mind goes to Germany, where, you know, they essentially created an atmosphere that allowed the Nazis to brew because they had such a obedient society.
Yeah.
You kind of want the society that's free, that drives the government, to never have something like the Nazis.
So it's less of a yes man society, more of an innovation society.
Critical thinking and all those
So
sort of things.
That's interesting. So how do you sort of mesh the two then?
Yeah, that's the
How do you
balance.
mesh the two?
That's the balance.
Yeah.
It's kind of comes back to, and I'm not a parent, so it's hard for me to say it, but good parenting and things like that, and trying to teach those values, and the schooling system should be set up to be a massive contributing factor.
A lot of influence is the schooling system, I think.
I think they should teach mindfulness and wellness in schools more. You look at our health.
It's talked about absolutely zero.
Our health program at
least when I
school,
was
it was like eat bread.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Here's a loaf of bread, mate, if
And
you're right.
that's another thing, diet.
Diet is
so all
huge.
of this, I'm a huge
Huge.
advocate for anything that controls inflammation. Inflammation is swelling in the body, and that is stress. And mental stress causes inflammation. Like, maybe, I don't know. But a lot of it is what you put into your body. So we talked about alcohol before. Like, my HRV after a night drinking is the lowest it ever is by a large scale. Like, it's a 10% of what it should be after a big night on alcohol with little sleep compounded on top of that. You're feeling like crap for a reason. Your body is inflamed. It's damaged everywhere.
Then you go get some KFC to try
and
and
you just
repair
eat
it.
crap to bury the sorrows.
Yeah, it just never works.
Jeez, it's fun.
Tastes good, but
It's fun getting drunk.
It's like we spoke with the Aquaflux guys about, you know, their diets and what they do to stay healthy. And what Brandon said was, it's the same as, like, you know, we're putting information into our mind, processing it, and then that's the outcome. Food source is the same for your body.
Massively.
You're taking the input.
You are what you eat.
And again, with the world, sometimes you can't choose what's coming into your head. You're just seeing what's on the news and what's this and what's that. You can actually choose what's coming into your body.
When I was living in Canada, that was one of the things I really noticed. It was so hard to find, even Canada. Like, I thought US would be the main factor, but it was so hard to find good, clean food. And that was one thing I really look forward to moving back to Australia, is having fresh, healthy, whole food, whole food.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a massive factor, and that could be the fundamental issue for a lot of people with mental health issues. Is what they're eating. I'd say sleep, number one. Number two is what you're putting into your
diet.
body.
I think like one of the best ways I choose to overcome the diet aspect would be when I go to the shops, I only buy healthy.
That's the only way.
Healthy
That's the only way to do it.
I don't have the discipline to
just have discipline when you're at the shops.
Have it once at the
and
shops.
all the other disciplines will fall into place.
And delete Uber Eats. You don't need it. It's a waste of money.
Makes it so easy to just get crap these days.
If you just buy healthy food and then you go home and you're like, oh man, I just got healthy food.
Like, I was eating so
eat
good during Corona because I wasn't out and about and driving and the needing to go to the convenience factor for food. That's where you fall over. Like, if you don't plan and have a disciplined aspect of packing good food and you have to buy it, there's not a lot of healthy options. And you think, oh, this is healthy. It's like, have a look at the packet. That's not healthy. Unless I'm cooking it and I know what's in it, most of the time you're buying stuff that's processed. It's got chemicals in it that's just not good for you.
It's one of those things.
It causes inflammation of your brain and it really impacts your health and wellness.
You don't realise it too until you do some sort of structured diet, or health kick, I guess.
Yeah.
Like for me, I there was one point I did intermittent fasting for around 3 or 4 months, and I was only eating healthy foods, and I did the intermittent fasting just because I read somewhere that you potentially have a bit more power at the gym.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh yeah, that'll be cool. Let's see if this works and everything. And when I was
testosterone, I think.
Yeah. So when I was doing that, I just felt like my mind and my body was just so much clearer.
Yeah.
It was crazy. Like it took about a month or so until I felt the effects.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wasn't eating until I think 11 o'clock in the morning. And then I'd finish my meals around 7 p.m, I think it was.
I think it's really effective when your original diet wasn't that good. And I was definitely in that category. And when I say wasn't that good, that could mean you're eating good enough, really, but you're not. You don't realise that bit of bread for your blood type or for you as an individual, for some people they can eat it, but for you it wasn't good. So you eat like a bowl of pasta and you're like, carb load before a big session and that'll be good. And then it's like your body gets the carbs and it's just doesn't know how to process it. It's this, GMO wheat that it doesn't know how to break it down and you're sluggish and your joints are hurting, your muscles are tight and you're like, I don't feel 100%. If you eat nothing, you're not eating the wrong thing, So that's where you can have the same effect of eating all the right stuff, because it's essentially eating all the right stuff means you're not eating the wrong stuff, and it's the wrong stuff that you eat that has the negative effects on your mind, body and soul.
Yeah, 100%.
There's a place in Melbourne, I'm sure they have them everywhere. You can go and get yourself tested, and I'm assuming it's a blood test, but I'm not sure, where they can literally have a look at you and go, okay, take this out of your diet, take this out of your diet, add this to your diet, add this to your diet, and you'll feel 100 times better.
Yeah.
Do you believe that?
Yeah, 100%. I had a friend did it in Portugal like 15 years ago, told me about it, and I never really looked at it beyond that.
Yeah.
And I did like a Pinterest where you send your blood somewhere and they'll tell you what you can and can't eat. I only got like a couple of things that I couldn't eat. Changed that and noticed a difference.
You did notice a difference.
But I think it's a massive factor.
So you don't think it's just a fugazi?
No, man, it's science. Like they'll look at it and they'll look at how your blood reacts to it.
Yeah.
And it's like, your blood doesn't know how to break that down.
Yeah.
It's like when we talk about recycling, and it's like we have all these products now that are artificial and synthesized, and the environment doesn't know how to break it down. So this Coke bottle is going to be here in 10,000 years' time.
Get you.
The environment hasn't evolved to naturally break it down as part of its ecosystem. Our body's the same. It's evolved over millions of years with the earth, eating what we've eaten, these whole foods, these natural foods, and now we've artificially changed all those things to what effect, and now our body gets it, and it's like, what's this? How do I? It's like eating plastic.
Yeah, okay.
You don't know how to break it down. You don't know how to process it. And for us, it looks like an apple, but it's not an apple.
Yeah.
It's different. They've changed it.
Yeah. Do you think as a parent, jumping onto that when they're young, oh, my kid needs this. This is what their body wants and needs, and this is what it doesn't want. Do you think that's a good thing? Like, just get them straight onto it when they're kids, instead of realizing when you're 25 and you're like, oh, gee, that's why I'm not as fit as I could be, or
massively,
or not fit, because you can change that, but like not feeling as good as it could.
Massively. And I don't blame my parents for not feeding me the right foods and stuff, but I've got friends with kids and they're huge advocates for it, and they haven't done the test or anything, but they know, like, if they give their kid this, especially with sugar, they're just crazy for 3 hours, and they're like, this turns into the devil, like there's this demon running around the house if I give him that food. But I think that's a huge factor. Obviously, you're more resilient to eat crappy foods when you're young because your body's just good at processing energy, making energy out of things.
Give me more sugar.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's a
That
Rain's starting to come in, guys.
big
coming in
factor.
hot.
That's actually so calming.
It is. It's nice.
Well, that's another one is trying to synchronize with nature. So you watch the sun come up, you watch the sun go down, and connect with it.
Mm.
And that's when you meditate and just connect with your circadian rhythm, and that sort of synchronizes you into your sleeping, when you should be eating, when you should be doing all these activities that historically we've done like that. So watching the rain relaxes you because it makes you present. You're like, for some reason, you're not thinking about all that other stuff. You're just watching the beauty of the change in environment.
Absolutely.
How good is it when you're camping and then it starts raining at night when you're in your tent or
It's
your
the
swag?
best.
Only after I've gone to bed.
Yeah.
And you've already got your kit set up.
Yeah,
wet-
exactly.
Wet or cold is okay when you're camping, but both, can't do both. Can't be wet and
Too
cold.
hot is also terrible when you can't sleep. Oh, look at that. And it's too hot. That's terrible.
Well, that's a good way to get to sleep, is cool your head.
Yeah, for sure.
If you can't sleep, go and put your head in a cold shower for like
Yeah.
10 seconds.
It's always funny no matter which way it goes. You always got a good story.
That's true.
Your tent's half flooded trying to get to sleep.
Yeah.
I want to bring this to a head now, guys. And
Yeah.
I think that was a really good chat. I mean, you know.
One thing quickly though,
Yeah, sure.
just while we're on nature, is
Yeah.
bushwalks. And there's a lot of factors to it, and we were talking about it before the podcast,
Yeah.
where going back to the genetic aspects of 100,000 years ago, what would our body do? It would look for anything unnatural and trigger a stress response. So any kind of artificial shapes or movements, anything outside of the pattern of a natural bushland, it would alert you. So we'd be constantly scanning when we're hunting or gathering. We'd be scanning for something that was different to its pattern of environment. So if you see the color red, you'd be like, "What's that? Do I need to hunt and kill it? Is it an apple that I go and grab,
Yeah.
or is it something that's going to come and attack me?"
Either way, it gives you that.
It triggers
response.
adrenaline
Yeah.
through your body. It'll trigger your sympathetic nervous system
Fight,
to get
flight.
energy to your muscles,
Or freeze.
and then you go back to like a normal state of mind, and then something else artificial will sort of pop out, and then you'd get that alert response. Like the marketing beast realized this
Look at the colors of
psychology
McDonald's.
100 years
Yellow.
ago.
Yeah.
So we're surrounded by these subliminal triggers of our fear response. So that's why we're living in our sympathetic nervous system, and we're always anxious. We're always like, "What's that? What's that? What's that?"
That's
Doesn't
so
add
true.
to our wellness.
Absolutely not.
Our DNA hasn't caught up yet. It takes thousands of years for our DNA to filter that out. So we have to be the kind of
Governor.
filter governance to filter it out and be like, all right, just relax.
Got to be consciously aware
You-
of this.
Your DNA response is telling you to be stressed, and you've actually got to consciously turn it off, because it's you're born with it turned on. So you've got to kind of reverse
Dial
it
it
and just
back.
be like, I'm not going to listen to that. I'm just going to relax, and that's where meditation and mindfulness comes in.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
So I think a good way to wrap it all up is to say, you know, in today's society and forever, I always say today's society, but that's just because that's when we're living, is right now. It's all about how you process things in yourself.
Yeah.
And if you consider your mind and your body a processing machine that you can change. I know you are born with certain, you know, genetics
You can upgrade.
and ways of thinking, but you can upgrade.
Yeah.
You can upgrade your body.
Yeah.
You can upgrade your mind. You can
Yeah.
do whatever you want to do with it if you set your mind to it.
Yeah.
So you're
Setting your
always,
intention.
you can't change the fact that information and data is always going to be coming to your brain, like the colors in marketing, like the news, like
100%.
like every single thing that you're perceiving is going to come into your head. It's how you decide to process that information that's going to be that output of stress, anxiety, or positivity, wellness, making you feel good, changing your mind, realizing that adversity breeds and cultivates innovation, positivity, and change. You can either let it
Train
get to
it.
you, or you can train your mind to even enjoy
Enjoy
the
it.
adversity, because
Yeah.
you know you're going to come out
Use it
better
as-
in 6 months' time.
That's-
Use it as a strength.
That's the best way you can do it, is to
Yep.
trick yourself into just enjoying
Yeah.
everything.
Yep. And same with your body, man. It's all about what you input, You're the processing plant of what's going to be the
The
outcome.
output. Yep. 100%.
So for those listening out there who've, because of Corona, because of everything else going on in the world, if you're feeling a certain way, just know you can change it. And the only thing stopping you is the decision that you make to not change it. If you want to change it,
you is you.
want to do it. And
That's
it's
it.
possible. And it might take a while, but if you can surround yourself with people who understand the way of thinking that you're on and the wavelengths that you're on, that'll help big time. Absolutely.
And talk to people. Like, a lot of people may feel like they don't have anyone, there isn't anything, there's no help.
But then they'll be
humanity
surprised when they reach
prevails.
out, and there is people thinking the same way.
Yeah,
It could be the person on the train to work. Like, just go and talk to people. And I know it's hard to kind of make that jump, but I've had random people just come up and start talking to me about their problems, and I'll just chat to them.
I love talking to people I don't know, because it gets you out of that group of people, that your cross section of society that you know. It really broadens your perspective and makes you question whether the way you're going about things is right, or do I actually agree with that, or do I really think something else, but I've just been going with it because it's easier to fit in that way. I guarantee you'll feel better if you start going down the path of what actually makes you feel right and your way of thinking. If you're consistently just trying to fit in with a group of friends or society or anything, you are in for a bad time.
You're in for failure because you're not being true to you, and you're not being true to your heart and your goals.
Exactly.
Jim Carrey, the mask.
Yeah.
We all wear masks, metaphorically 100%. Speaking. Like.
Yep.
Yep.
That's it. Oh, guys, thanks for that chat. That's been a really good one.
It's been a good chat.
On a rainy day here on the Gold Coast. And for you guys listening and watching, I hope you've enjoyed that. Bit more of a calm, relaxed podcast today. Just talk about some important things about,
green tea,
what life is and how it's going to make you feel.
If you drink too much coffee, mix it up with some green
comment,
tea.
Subscribe, and keep up the good work, guys. We're going to be doing some cool things coming up soon, and you'll hear more about it on our social channels. But we've got a lot coming up.
Stay tuned. And if you think someone else needs to hear this as well, send it on to them, because we have had a good chat about wellness. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, in our society suppress chats about wellness, and I think it's a critical part to our development. So
allow yourself to be vulnerable, and you can change. Definitely.
That's it.
All right, guys. We'll wrap it up there.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.